Aloha, everyone. Will the Committee on Executive Matters and Legal Affairs please come to order? It's 1:01. I'd like to welcome Committee Vice Chair Cordero and committee members Kiaina, Tupola, Okimoto, and Tolba. Council members Waters, Wire, and Say are excused from today's meeting. Before we start our meeting, I have some procedural announcements to make. Pursuant to Act 220, Session Laws of Hawaii 2021, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members, for your information, we do have a lengthy agenda and may need to recess due to a scheduled Committee on Transportation meeting which is scheduled for 2:30 p.m., and we will reconvene afterwards. Being the chair of Executive Matters and also Transportation, we do have some flexibility, and we'll see how we proceed with this agenda. I'll make the announcement at the appropriate time. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways, remotely and in person in the council chamber. Persons entering the council chamber to testify are required to spread themselves out. If the chamber becomes crowded, persons may be requested to wait outside the chamber until called to testify. Oral testimony, both remote and in person, on each agenda item will be allowed when the item is taken up in the following order: in-person testimony in the council chamber, and then remote testimony. Before testifying, each person shall state their full name and the agenda item they're testifying on, and each speaker will be limited to a 1-minute presentation per item. Act 220 requires all votes at remote meetings to be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, if any objections are noted, I will call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside the council chamber under Act 220, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audiovisual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we reestablish contact. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, may be posted by the city clerk and available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones for the duration of this meeting. And we begin today with agenda item number 1. This is Resolution 22-262, which urges the City Administration to formally recognize and observe November 28th as La Ku'okoa, Hawaiian Independence Day. Members, please note that we do have a posted proposed CD1 to the resolution submitted by Councilmember Tupola. And for your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify? Okay. There being none, we'll proceed to remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any registered remote testifiers?
Yes, we do have one.
Okay. I'd also like to welcome Councilmember Wire to the meeting. Understand that we do have a remote testifier. When I call your name or the last 3 digits of your phone number, please follow the prompts. Please state your name for the record. First, we have Ken Conklin.
Chair, testifier has not logged on.
Okay. We also have Xixing Zhang. While we wait for Ms. Zhang to appear, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Councilmember Say as well.
She's not logged on.
Okay, very well. Is there anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Members, we are on discussion on this matter. I want to acknowledge and thank Vice Chair Kiaina as well as Councilmember Tupola for their hard work on this draft. Is there any discussion? Yeah, Councilmember Tupola.
Sorry, are we taking up the CD1 now, or are we just talking about the underlying bill?
We're talking about the underlying resolution, but if you would like to, my recommendation will be that we move to the posted CD1.
Okay, I'll make comments when we're on the CD1.
Great. Okay. Vice Chair?
Is this I'm sorry, is this under the underlying, the overall?
Yeah, so we're currently on the overall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you, Chair, to yourself as well as to Councilmember Tupola for helping to move this measure forward. Formally recognizing La Ku'okoa is a great opportunity to educate the public about Hawaii's political history and to observe this day to celebrate the identity, culture, and patriotism the Native Hawaiian people feel for Hawaii. It also provides important historical information of the Native Hawaiian people and government's exercise of independence prior to the overthrow and annexation of Hawaii. In 1993, I had the privilege of working with Senator Akaka on the enactment into law of the apology resolution, which offered a U.S. apology for its complicity in the 1893 overthrow and committed the United States to a process of reconciliation which continues today. Laku'okoa is important to Native Hawaiians to just remind ourselves as well as the general public of how important the independence of Hawaii was to the people of Hawaii. And while many of us, including myself, continue to work within governmental systems at the county, state, and federal level, our quest for justice continues, and I believe that any effort to educate people about our political history is important to this discourse. Thank you so much.
Very well. Is there any further discussion on the underlying resolution? I'd like to acknowledge Council Chair Waters as well. Thank you. So the chair will be recommending that Resolution 22-262 be amended to the posted CD1 offered by Councilmember Tupola. At this time, is there any discussion on that recommendation? Okay. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, Resolution 22-262 is amended to the CD1. Is there any, Councilmember Tupola, did you want to offer some discussion or offer any discussion on the resolution now that it's been amended?
Sure, yeah. Do you want me to read the amendments or just summarize them?
You can just summarize them.
Okay. So the current CD1, just for everyone's information, I took portions of Councilmember Kia'aina's suggestions and appreciate all the work she did with the former senator and incorporated also comments from the community, specifically the Royal Order of Kamehameha. And so we added in important portions of the historical lead up to Laku'okoa and what it is and how it became for the Hawaiian people. So I'm grateful for yourself, Chair, and thank you as well to the body for taking this up and learning a little bit more about it. And hopefully on the full council, I'll have the translation ready in Hawaiian. I think it's really important for us to acknowledge that Hawaiian is also an official language here. And so if we are able to pass this out in full council, I would like it to be attached to a full, complete translation of this in Olala, Hawaii. Also, part of the amendments that were made in this CD were from all the other counties. So every single county has passed a resolution in similar form to this. So I'm very grateful that our county is getting on board, and there also has been some movement on the state level to acknowledge it. So I thank all of those people who for years, if not decades, have been already celebrating Laku'okoa and making sure that this history is an important part of community celebrations and recognitions. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. And is there any further discussion on the CD1? Okay, the chair then recommends that Resolution 22-262 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you. We'll move on now to item number 2, which is Bill 1 of 2023, which directs the Office of Council Services to prepare a consolidated table of reporting requirements found in the revised ordinances of Honolulu 2021 and to insert the table in the revised ordinances of Honolulu 2021. We'll now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers on this matter?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify on Bill 1 of 2023? Okay, hearing none, we'll now proceed to remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any registered remote testifiers on this matter?
Chair, there are none.
Clerks, is there anyone standing by remotely to testify?
None.
Okay. Members, we are in discussion. Is there any discussion on Bill 1 of 2023? Okay, hearing none. The chair recommends that Bill 1 of 2023 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you. Agenda item number 3, which is Bill 25 of 2021. Bill 25 of 2021, CD1, establishes a policy of anti-bias and inclusion for all city officers and employees and requires the establishment of a similar policy by certain private contractors having contracts with the city. Members, please note we do have a posted proposed CD2 to the bill submitted by myself, and for your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. We'll now proceed with in-person testimony on Bill 25 of 2021. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify on Bill 25 of 2021? Oh. Okay. We do have one. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Dos Santos Tam and members of the committee. I'm Nola Miyazaki, Director of the Department of Human Resources, and we're in full support of this CD2 to Bill 25. We did have a chance to meet with Chair Dos Santos Tam, and we appreciate his consideration and incorporation of our feedback into this current version of the bill. I have my EO officer here via WebEx if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. Council members, are there any questions for the director or her EO officer? Okay. Hearing none, we'll proceed now with, is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll now proceed with a remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any registered remote testifiers?
Chair, there are a few.
Okay, great. When I call your name or the last 3 digits of your phone number, please follow the prompts and please state your name for the record. We have first Rebecca Soon, then Denise Sukiyama, and then Shishi Xiong. So Rebecca, if you'd like to proceed.
Aloha ko, Eluna, Ho'omalu Dos Santos Tam, Amena Lala, o ka aha kula na kauhale o Honolulu nei. O vau o Rebecca Soon, nohoau ma Apan Aina 6 Manuanu. Ua vaihoau I ko ua lalo ho ike I ka kau ia e ka ko o pa'a I ka pila 25. E kuneau ma ko ua lalo ho ike I ka kau a vaiho ia yaya. Ma ko kau au e pane aku I ko o ko mau ni nau. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui for that beautiful testimony in support in Olelo, Hawaii. Denise Sukiyama? Please proceed.
Good afternoon. I am here just to support, again, the bill and the CD2. And as Director Miyazaki said, we are in full support and are anxious to implement the provisions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the last testifier is Shishi Xiong. There we go. And you're on mute, but there we go. All right, please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. My name is Jizi Xiong, or Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support. Olelo, Hawaii is a very essential aspect of our culture, and so is hula and all the other aspects of Hawaii, and any way that we can support the Hawaiian indigenous culture is something that we should do. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. All right, clerks, is there anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Members, we are in discussion. Is there any discussion on Bill 25 of 2021? Okay. Seeing none, the chair recommends that Bill 25 of 2021, CD1, be amended to the posted CD2. Is there any discussion on that recommendation? Any objections? Any reservations? Okay, hearing none, Bill 25 of 2021, CD1 is amended to the CD2. The chair then recommends that Bill 25 of 2021, CD2, be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you. Now we are on to the next agenda item, which is Bill 57 of 2022, CD1, relating to the public carry of firearms. Members, please note that we do have two posted proposed CD1s to the bill submitted by myself, which is OCS 2023-0058, 1/27/2023, 11:48 a.m., and a proposed CD1 submitted by Councilmember Tupola, which is OCS 2023-0072, 1/31/2023, 11:13 a.m. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Members, we also have a hand-carried CD1, which is OCS 2023-0087/2/6/2023, 10:46 a.m., submitted by myself. And this CD1 makes the following amendments. It updates the bill to reflect that the bill is amending the revised ordinances of Honolulu 2021 instead of the revised ordinances of Honolulu 1990. And in Section 2 of the bill, it does two things. One, revises Section 41 blank point 2 to add the definition of public place to reference ROH 13-1.1 and to delete the definition of public place listed in item 6 in the definition of sensitive places. And the second amendment that it does to Section 2 of the bill is that it revises Section 41 blank point 5 to replace the word firearm with the phrase pistol or revolver in the title of the section and its subsections C4 and C5 to be consistent with the use of, quote, pistol or revolver, unquote, in subsection A. It further makes miscellaneous and technical and non-substantive amendments. So just to recap that, the hand-carried CD1 is basically the same as the proposed CD1 submitted by myself, but it corrects the definition of public place to reference ROH 13-1.1 rather than ROH 10-1.1. So that's the only major difference between the two CD1s proposed by myself. Okay. Having gotten that out of the way, before we proceed with public testimony, I would remind the general public that Bill 57 addresses the concealed carry of firearms in sensitive places. In particular, Section 1 of the bill reads as follows. The purpose of this ordinance is to define those sensitive locations within the city and county of Honolulu where the carrying of firearms is prohibited, consistent with an individual's Second Amendment right to bear arms, and the United States Supreme Court's ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association Incorporated versus Bruin. To ensure that we maintain an equitable and meaningful dialogue, I ask that testifiers please refrain from broader discussions of the Second Amendment in general, broader discussions of gun control in general, or HPD's rules, as these are outside of the scope, the stated scope and purpose of the bill in Section 1. So for testifiers, I ask that we focus primarily on the issue in question, which is which sensitive places shall be defined or perhaps not defined, as the case may be, within the city and county of Honolulu. As a reminder, testifiers will be limited to a 1-minute presentation, and we will proceed with in-person testimony first. And so clerks, I understand that we have several in-person testifiers, and so we'll proceed with those who have registered first. So we have in the chamber with us Michael Elliott, followed by John Abbott, followed by James Wallace, followed by Scott Shedko, then Ryan Tinajero, and then Paul Kudal, and then Peter Roa. So we'll go in that order for those in the chamber, and we'll start with Mr. Elliott. Please press, and for the testifiers in person, please press the button to activate it, and the red light will pop on.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Mike Elliott. Been here previously. We testified with regard to Bill 57 as to its nature that would be found to be unconstitutional. Current federal cases that are happening within New York and New Jersey concerning the NYSERPA Bruin decisions have already shown this to be the case, where a number of these issues that are listed within Bill 57 as written are currently under TRO. And every place that has currently tried to push this ahead within their state legislatures. Bill 1230, yesterday we were out testifying, they're trying to do the same thing. It institutes a hopscotch method or methodology of locations of sensitive places. We ask that you stick to the 5. legislative buildings, which you have in CD1. I applaud Councilwoman Topola. I think CD1 is an excellent bill. It is very concise, it is direct, and it is meeting with those boundaries that are set forth by the Supreme Court. Courthouses, polling places, schools, public jails and prisons. Those are kind of those 5 places that are usually considered within that sensitive places summary. Nothing that's in any of these bills is directed against criminals. This is all about directing against law-abiding citizens, precluding them from carrying in what you deem to be a sensitive place. Thank you. I'm available for any other comment or testimony at any time. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions for the testifier? Okay, thank you, Mr. Elliott. We'll move on to John Abbott.
Still working? Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, Council. My name is John Abbott. I'm also living here in Hawaii for 25 years. I just want to voice my support for Councilwoman Tupola's amendment. I think it's the right approach to this contentious issue. I just want to thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, seeing none. James Wallace.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is James Wallace, and I strongly oppose against Bill 57. It is unfair, law-abiding citizens that we are limited to where we can carry firearms. As criminals, they can carry anywhere. Reason why I say this is because you know, and I know, and everybody knows criminals don't obey laws. Bad gun laws, this being one, criminals have the advantage over us, and seems to me politicians don't care. If you care, don't pass Bill 57. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wallace? Okay, seeing none. Scott Chedko. And he'll be followed by Ryan Tinahero, Paul Kudal, and then Peter Roa in that order. Please proceed.
Okay, Scott Shedko, Bill 57 and CD1. Honorable Chair and City Council members, I hope you've seen my written testimony. I do have more copies if you haven't. I'm standing by those words. I'd just like to elaborate with a question. Why can a law-abiding citizen, why can they protect themselves at home, but they can't protect their vulnerable children at school? One teacher asked recently, if an active shooter is on school grounds, which student do you want me to shield with my body? I attended Columbine High School, and if you're ever in Littleton, Colorado, I invite you to visit the Columbine Memorial, and I think you'll find it a very powerful experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Shedko? Okay, hearing none. Ryan Tinahero.
Members of the council, thank you for your time. I'm speaking on terms of Bill 57. As I stand on my written testimony, I support the passing of CD1 identified as ATUP1. However, I stand on my comment card today in opposition of the original version of Bill 57. Should there be any other questions or concerns, just let me know. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, hearing none. Paul Kudal, who will be followed by Peter Roa.
Hi, my name is Paul Kudal, representing Hawaii Tactical Vision, LLC. I strongly oppose Bill 57 because I don't see how is this going to prevent less crime. I feel like, you know, it's only going to prevent us CCW holders from protecting our loved ones and others. Again, one good example, if I were to pick up my kid from school and I couldn't carry my firearm with me concealed, and then so happened a criminal came there and wanted to shoot up the school? What if your kid went to that same school as I went to, my kid's school, and then he killed one of you guys, loved ones? I could have prevented that from happening. And, that's why I'm an instructor. We train and educate civilians in all this kind of stuff. So, if you want less crime, let us, be protectors of the community too. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Kudal? Okay. Next up is Peter Roa, and both Mr. Kudal and Mr. Roa were from Hawaii Tactical Division, LLC.
Hey, thanks for having us today, guys. Let's see, what did I want to say? Oh, so just so you guys know, more than 90% of these mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. Just so you guys know that. This is the perfect spot for them to go to, right? No one else is armed. Makes perfect sense, right? The next thing I wanted to say is, where was all this energy about stopping guns before the Bruin decision, when criminals are out there shooting places up? Where was all this energy then? Now that the Supreme Court has decided that law-abiding citizens can carry to defend themselves, that it's not a second-class right, that it's just as much a right as freedom of speech, ever since that decision, there's all this energy to stop people from carrying guns, law-abiding citizens? That just mind-boggling to me. Lastly, I want to say, I did this yesterday over at the Capitol, but I want to open up an invite for all you guys to take our CCW class. It's a great class. We're teaching a lot of de-escalation. We're teaching people to retreat. We're not teaching people to shoot. That's, very last resort. Sit through one of the classes if you guys want. Get with me after this, and we'd love to give you guys a CCW class. We'll come to you guys completely free of charge on Hawaii Tactical Division. We'll do that for you guys, so you guys can see what we're teaching the public. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Roa? Okay. Seeing none, is there anyone else in the chamber who would like to testify? Okay. Okay. Please come forward and state your name. Oh, and please press the button, and yeah, you should be good.
Chair, my name is Adriel Lamb. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I did submit written testimony, and I don't want to belabor the point on the violations of the Second Amendment, but also the First Amendment, our right to freely assemble, peaceably assemble, and also the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizures. These restrictions put a lot of violations and it expands the violations, what that does to our constitutional rights, as well as the effectiveness of our fireworks ban. As you have seen, that when you overreach in unconstitutional breaches, something else happens. But I do want to make up 2 points here from my written testimony is every general officer in the United States Army is issued a personal firearm. That is because personal security is a personal responsibility. It's an individual responsibility. God forbid that the general officer has to use his firearms because it would be a very dire situation. But security begins with the individual, and we should not rely on others to take care of our security. I would recommend, as our previous testimony, that each elected official also know and understand what it means to carry and maintain a firearm and what it means to use it to protect yourselves and your family and those around you. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lam? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to this side. Mr. Manaku, please proceed.
James K. Manaku, senior concerned parent, grandparent, great-grandparent. But before I begin my testimony, I need to have you folks ask me questions because 1 minute is very unconstitutional for me to begin my answers because it is very unconstitutional, gang. 1 minute for me to tell you folks why, yeah? But anyway, let me begin. I'm totally against it. I have 21 grandchildren, 8 great-grandchildren. I have 5 children, yeah? Now, you want to know why? It's unconstitutional for many reasons. Yeah, we already have a strong constitution already that bans guns in Hawaii. Yeah? Why are we going to guns now? Why do we need guns to protect ourselves? And on the continent, they need guns to protect themselves. They always needed guns. Why in Hawaii we need guns? Yeah? Did we walk around with guns before? Did we? We never did. We don't need to. Now, if you ask me if I came into a situation that I needed a gun, I have a gun. If I needed a gun, I would get my gun and protect my family. Yes, I would. But do we need it here in Hawaii? No, we don't. But you folks are asking us to walk around with guns? I don't want to confuse the police. I don't want them to be confused when I have run and to shoot somebody that is threatening my family. I don't want them to run up to me and shoot me because I had the gun trying to shoot somebody else. I want them to do their job. Yeah? But you guys not letting them do their job. Now, we have a constitution. Make the constitution stronger. Get rid of the guns.
If you could wrap up.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Anybody have questions for me?
Any questions for Mr. Manaku?
No? You folks don't have a question for me?
I guess not at this time.
So there's nothing you folks want to have me say to protect my family? Wow, we don't pay you guys enough then, yeah?
Thank you, Mr. Manaku.
Gee, I'm so sorry.
No problem. Are there any other individuals in the chamber who'd like to testify? Please come up and state your name and then proceed.
Hi, my name's Adrian Flack. I'd just like to thank the chair and the council members. I generally oppose this bill, but I could support Ms. Topola's amendments as she has put forth. Otherwise, I would like to echo everyone else's opinions that they've come up with as far as opposition to this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, hearing none, is there anyone else in the chamber who would like to testify on this matter? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any registered remote testifiers?
Chair, we have.
Okay, I see there is a good list of testifiers. We'll proceed in the order in which they registered. We'll proceed first with Marcus Tanaka, then Kuli'i Makaneole, then Michael Scully, and then Jamie Detweiler in that order. Okay, and Mr. Tanaka, please proceed.
Oh, hello. Wanted to add on that, you know, the Bill SB 1230 was yesterday, had a hearing, and it pretty much mimics the sensitive places in the original draft of Bill 57. You know, HPD testified that they're going to have a hard time enforcing this, you know, because it's just too much I mean, that's what I'm assuming, but they're going to have a hard time enforcing it. Okay. And then I want to address some of the concerns I was reading in the comments about the sensitive places. You know, a lot of people, most of the testimonies who support this bill are copy and paste. You know, so I suggest you guys focus on the testimonies that are original. You know, you're hearing people's stories of why, you know, they want or don't want this bill. Yeah. Not just a copy paste, put in your name kind of thing. And then another issue was people have something with the background checks about CCW holders. You know, we've passed multiple background checks. I passed 3 background checks last year. You know, we pass this annually. We're in a federal background check system that's unique to Hawaii. You know, we pass a mental health check system. All of this HPD has done on us. We've taken classes that HPD required. We've taken a shooting proficiency class that HPD also mandates. So after all of these hoops and qualifications, you know, to say that CCWs cannot carry in XYZ place, you know, it's like, what are we doing all this stuff for? It's useless. And then regarding the different drafts, I mean, if I had to support it, I would support Tupolo's version, but I don't support really any of them. But we're talking about basically, for me, it would be like a poop sandwich, and I'm taking a small bite versus eating the whole sandwich, which is the original bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Tanaka? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next remote testifier, Kuali'i Makaneole.
Chair, the testifier is not logged on.
Okay, then we'll proceed to Michael Scully, followed by Jamie Detweiler, followed by William Yaela. Mr. Scully, please proceed.
Aloha. Can you hear me?
Yep, please proceed.
Aloha. A sensitive place can only be a place that is guarded by armed police 24/7. A park is not a sensitive place. As we have sadly learned, if a criminal has deadly intent with a weapon in a park or a school, who is going to stop them if the police cannot get there in time? Concealed permit license holders abide by the laws, have trained with firearms to achieve competency and safety standards, and take our Second Amendment rights seriously. We have also accepted the huge responsibility to protect ourselves, family, and other vulnerable citizens in deadly encounters. Every day across this great nation, police officers, mothers, children, and vulnerable citizens are protected by concealed carry permit holders who are hailed as heroes by their local politicians. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Scully? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to next testifier, Jamie Detweiler.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I stand on my written testimony as submitted, but I'd like to highlight a couple of points within my testimony. First of all, we can all agree that violent crimes, backing it up, I strongly oppose Bill 57. We can all agree that violent crimes involving firearms are tragic, but the dictate of Bruin is clear. Legislative interest balancing is understanding and elsewhere appropriate. However, it is not deference that the Constitution demands here. While the authors of this bill may disagree with Bruin, it may not disobey Bruin. And lastly, and most impactfully on people, is our recent incident in Mililani. I've been a resident in Mililani for over 35 years, and what happened to that young mother and her child and the Good Samaritan that stepped in was uncalled for and could have been thwarted with fewer serious critical injuries if there was a licensed, trained, concealed carry individual there to thwart the actions of that gentleman. And yesterday I did testify at SB 1230. There was a gentleman there that said, what if the person driving the car that ran over the woman, nearly killing her, had a gun? Well, his car was used as a weapon, okay? And so again, if someone who was licensed and concealed carry were there, the outcome would have been much different.
All right.
Additionally, I'm the president of the Hawaii Federation of Republican Women. I'm a mother, a wife, a grandmother, and I am licensed. I'm a licensed handgun owner. I'm trained. And as previous testifiers said, we've all gone through rigorous background checks and mental health examination.
Thank you. If you could wrap up.
Thank you for this opportunity to testify, Chair. I yield.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? All right, the next testifiers are William Yaela, Rebecca Soon, Lori Fujimoto, and then Christopher Thomas in that order.
Chair, William is not logged in.
We'll then proceed to Ms. Soon.
Aloha ho, Eluna ho'omalua me na lala. Ovao Rebecca Soon, speaking in strong support of Bill 57. As for decades, as we know, Honolulu has really long remained a jurisdiction with among the lowest for gun violence, and in large part because guns were simply not allowed outside the home. Jurisdictions around the country that have allowed guns outside the home have already enacted safe place legislation to help regulate and keep our communities safe. So the council taking this action at this time to catch up is really appropriate. And I just want to appreciate and thank you all for doing that. As the council and the legislature now seek to navigate after the SCOTUS ruling that really brought in guns, as we know, outside the household, our community, I believe, really does stand in strong support of any and all efforts to maintain the safety of our keiki, our kupuna, our residents, wherever they may be. The good guy with a gun argument has not been supported by data for a long time. I'm extremely appreciative listening today to these organizations that support training, de-escalation, retreat. I think all of that is really critical, and just mahalo for the folks that are doing that work. We know, however, that the safest way to keep our communities maintain that safety is to have less guns in public places. And just in closing, wanted to note that as a small business owner myself, I encourage the committee to maintain the current language in Section 4 that would require express consent to public carry and private businesses. I think this will help with uniform enforcement and mitigate any potential disagreements. So mahalo again for the opportunity to share support and for your taking this really important measure up.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Soon? Okay, we'll then proceed to Lori Fujimoto, Christopher Thomas, Michael Galoyu Jr., and Michael Rice in that order. Ms. Fujimoto. Oh, let's see, we can't hear you. If you could try, let's see, try again here. Okay.
Hello?
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Is this Lori?
Okay. Hi. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. My name is Lori Fujimoto, and I'm here to speak in support of less restrictions for qualified citizens to carry firearms, concealed or non-concealed. I guess I feel like it's so restrictive that even though the Supreme Court allows concealed carry, it's so restrictive that it's basically only allowing us to carry while we're driving or walking on public streets, which is pretty much what I had, for 20 years, just pretty much at home. And I guess I'm about 5'3" and just like a little over 100 pounds. And so I would be like no match for anyone heavier trying to harm me, my son, or others around me. Concealed carry would act as an equalizer to allow me to defend myself and others. God forbid, if there is a shooter, the only thing I could do is to run and hide and wait for police to arrive. My husband has been employed as a federal agent for the past 18 years, and just looking at what he had gone through for background checks, I feel very confident that I would pass the same database background checks as him. I guess according to a study done by the Crime Prevention Research Center, it said that concealed carry permit holders are the most law-abiding group of citizens in the country, even more law-abiding per capita than police officers.
Thank you. And if you could wrap up.
I just urge you to find creative solutions to allow more leeway in your definition of sensitive places. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Members, any questions for Ms. Fujimoto? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Christopher Thomas, followed by Michael Galoyu Jr., then Michael Rice, and then Soleil Roach.
Good afternoon, members of the council. I'm testifying in strong support of the original form of Bill 57. My name is Christopher Thomas. I'm a resident of Kailua, Hawaii. I'm also an attorney practicing in Honolulu, a military veteran, and a father of 3 children. I am also a Hawaii state licensed gun owner. I've submitted written testimony to the council for consideration, and I'm testifying today as Hawaii's ambassador for Giffords Gun Owners for Safety. As you likely know, Giffords is a nationwide organization founded by former U.S. Senator Gabby Giffords and her husband, U.S. Senator Mark Kelly, both of Arizona. Giffords was formed over a decade ago, in part in response to a school shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary in 2012. And as you are aware, Bill 57 includes as a sensitive place, obviously, schools and daycare facilities. Giffords advocates for the passage of practical, responsible, common sense gun laws as a means to reduce gun violence in our communities, including schools and daycares. Bill 57 in its original form is an example of a common sense gun law and therefore has the strong support of the Giffords organization. Bill 57 is common sense because it represents what the city and county of Honolulu residents are already used to. Residents of this island are used to not having guns present in their schools, government buildings, courthouses, airports, bars, restaurants, and theaters. Correspondingly, residents are also used to not experiencing gun violence in our city and county due to these laws that have been passed historically in Hawaii. Bill 57 is a common sense gun law and has the strong support of Giffords Gun Owners for Safety. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for Mr. Thomas? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Michael Gloyu Jr.
There we go. All right. Good afternoon, council members. Michael Gloyu Jr. on behalf of the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. We stand in strong support of Bill 57 and oppose any amendments that would weaken the bill. Please make it note that the only reason we're here is because of the horrible SCOTUS ruling done by a majority of Supreme Court justices that perjured themselves to Congress to get on the bench. We've had strong, sensible gun legislation here in Honolulu my entire life, or living here, going on 42 years. And we have the lowest gun rate violence in the nation. Please do not take us backwards. Do not take us to Texas's wild, wild west. That is not the way we need to go. We need to protect ours. More guns on the streets is not the answer. There is no such thing as a good guy with a gun preventing violence. There's nothing that proves that. There's no study that proves that. And we ask that you pass this bill to help protect us all. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for Michael Gloyu Jr.? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Michael Rice, Soleil Roach, Kaleo Nakoa, and Todd Yukutake in that order. Mr. Rice, please proceed.
Hello, Michael Rice speaking against Bill 57. I'm soon to be a concealed carry holder. I'm waiting on my final paperwork to get approved before I submit it. I ride the bus. I will hopefully ride the train once it's done. If this bill passes, I'll have to go buy a car now, and I won't be able to afford an electric car. I've gone through so many classes, I've probably gone through more background checks than you have currently, just for one gun. If this bill passes, like I said, I won't be able to carry anywhere, like in my car, whatever. And we get training. Right? And this won't stop anybody who's already doing bad things, right? Right at this moment, there's a student on a high school carrying a gun. Faculty know of his existence. They know he has the gun. Security are told not to engage this student. This because he uses the gun to rob drug dealing students, and they have even called HPD on this matter, which is very concerning. I wish I had more time, but I will stop my testimony now.
Okay. Members, any questions for Mr. Rice? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to Soleil Roach. Please proceed.
Hi, thank you. My name is Soleil Roche. I strongly oppose Bill 57. I will stand in my written testimony, but I'd like to highlight two specific points. The bad guys get to pick the time and place that they will attack, and unfortunately, private citizens can't count on police to protect them. In fact, research shows that statistically, armed private citizens are best able to mitigate the loss of innocent life quickly because they are right there when the imminent threat of death, great bodily harm, or forcible felony happens. I'd also like to point out, in contrast to what a couple of testifiers in support of this bill have mentioned, There are studies out there that show that good guys with guns do prevent a lot of crime. According to the CDC, there are up to 3 million lawful defensive gun uses by private citizens in the U.S. every year. Those defensive gun uses far outnumber how much guns are used offensively by criminals. And if you look at my testimony, there's a link there to a source of that information. My second point is that according to the national subject matter expert named Ed Monk of Last Resort Firearms Training, in active killer situations, when an armed private citizen is present and they choose to intervene in an attack, we see the victim count in those attacks drop to single digits 89% of the time. That's nearly a 90% success rate, which is far higher than any other strategy that anyone has come up with to stop active killers. Additionally, the faster that active killers are neutralized, the sooner that first responders can get in there and start rendering aid to victims so that there are even fewer lives lost. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Ms. Roche? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Kaleo Nakoa, Todd Yukutake, Deb Nemad, Andrew Namiki Roberts in that order. Mr. Nakoa.
How's it, Chair? Thank you, guys. I just get one question for all the council members. When was the last time you guys held any active shooter training? That's a question for you, Chair. When was the last time you guys had active shooter training? Never since you took the seat. Because since you guys took the seat, especially you, Chair, or Councilmember Okimoto and Matt Wire, you know, my kids in school, they already been through active shooter training. So if you guys haven't been there and my kids have, well, what is that telling you? It's telling you that criminals will attack schools. And just to give you guys, do you guys remember Haione? There was a stabbing a couple years ago. You guys remember that? Yes or no? Because my time's running out.
Just, please continue.
You can nod your head. Obviously, you don't remember, but I do because my kids were there. And you know what? I showed up to the school, and that person who committed that crime walked right in front of me, and I couldn't do nothing because in my mind, he still had the knife. If I had a weapon, because I'm trained 20 years in the military, I carried concealed weapons for 6 years in the mainland. And by the way, to all you guys who are saying there's no good guys with guns, I guess you guys don't support HPD, support the sheriffs, or support the people who protect your freedoms and rights. But as for me, all you guys are saying comparing Hawaii to Texas and Arizona, but yet you guys are not worried about the criminals who are still walking around with guns. Yeah, law-abiding citizens, when you guys see police officers on the side of the road, it's a habit that you guys slow down.
Yeah.
Imagine when criminals walk into a safe zone, knowing that there's parents out there walking around with guns. Guess what? They second guess themselves.
Now, Mr. Nakoa, if you can wrap up.
Safe zones is not for city council because you guys probably have an armed officer sitting in the back corner by the door right now, right? Federal buildings, you guys have multiple officers, sheriffs walking around at your beck and call. If there's an argument at the BOE, there's how many sheriffs show up.
Mr. Nakoa, if you wrap up.
Our school kids are not allowed, or we're not allowed to protect our kids in school.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Nakoa? Okay. Up next, we have Todd Yukutake, followed by Deb Nieman, Andrew Namiki Roberts, and Jishi Zhang. Mr. Yukutake.
Aloha. Please see my testimony for references. I'm Todd Yukutake, and I oppose this bill. The Supreme Court's Second Amendment decision last year said the government has a burden to prove foreign restrictions are backed by historical tradition. This means laws are generally present in states, not territories, from the time period of the U.S. Constitution ratification in 1789. The Bill 57 is a reform does not meet this burden. In Oregon, New Jersey sensitive police and security restrictions laws were recently passed do not have a historical precedent. In New Jersey, the legislature should have an historical precedent prior to voting on the law. Also reads the list on this. What's the problem? The broad problem. Ever since someone blamed a crime, a car, threats to the people of Hawaii and our culture for more ways of violent crime. However, crime still occurs and we need to protect ourselves. I don't want to be a statistic. I recommend voting no, or at the very least, go with to POA's CD1, which I don't think is necessary, but can live with.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Yukutake? I know we had a little hard time hearing, but we have his written testimony as well. But are there any questions for him? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to Deb Nemad, followed by Andrew Namiki Roberts, followed by Xixi Xiang. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the Council for the opportunity to testify. I'm Deb Nemad, and I am President of Brady Hawaii, and I am testifying on their behalf. The Supreme Court made it clear in Bruin that its holding was neither, quote, a regulatory straitjacket nor a regulatory blank check, and that restrictions on guns in sensitive places are permissible so long as they are objective. It would be illogical to deem a swath of locations not sensitive simply because the list seems too long. I stand by my prepared remarks, but feel I must respond to some of the earlier comments. I'm quite concerned that the people who've been testifying against Bill 57 are unclear that Bruin only refers to self-defense. It doesn't refer to defense of others. Protection of others, like wanting to take a gun to school to protect the kids, is not what's sanctioned. How can the police determine who is the good guy with the gun from the bad guy from the gun? I'd also like to point out that most mass shootings occur in areas where guns are permitted. Of the 156 shootings that occurred from 2009 to 2016, only 10% occurred in gun-free zones. The majority of these shootings, 63%, occurred in private homes. Back to the specifics of the bill.
And if you could summarize, I know that we have a short 1 minute to testify.
I just want to emphasize how important the default provision is, that individuals can opt in to authorize the public carry of guns on their property, because it can, if not, it can lead to confrontations, imagining shop owners or their employees telling people that knowing somebody's armed, that guns are not allowed. So I have other problems with the Tupola Amendment, which I've described in detail in my written testimony. Please support Bill 57 as written and reject the Tupola Amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Nemad? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Andrew Namiki Roberts, followed by Xixi Xiang. Mr. Roberts, please proceed.
Hi, good afternoon, committee members. My name is Andrew Namiki Roberts. I'm a director for Hawaii Firearms Coalition. I represent our members and Hawaii's 125,000 registered gun owners. I don't think that the City Council is the right place for this bill. Yesterday, the Hawaii Senate said that they are going forward with SB 1230, and that is going to be the vessel for them passing a law about sensitive places. So therefore, the city's bill is unneeded, unnecessary, and just brings additional legal liability to the city. If the city does move forward with this bill, we recommend moving forward with Tupola's CD1 with a couple of changes. One would be removing the distance requirement for voting places. That 200-foot distance means that roads across the state would be out of bounds during certain times of the year for voting. The other addition that we'd like to be added to the signing requirement for private businesses would be an affirmative defense that if the sign is not correctly displayed, has fallen down, or is otherwise illegible, that a person cannot be charged or issued a violation. The other change we would like to see is that the sign has to be up for 30 days to have effect to allow people to see it. With regards to other parts of the bill, the sensitive places doctrine laid out by Bruin says that there has to be a historical analysis done before any law is passed. Where are the city attorneys? Where is the mayor's office? As far as I know, they have not even attempted to provide the council with any historical data or plan to fight this if it goes to court. And as such, this bill should not move forward until that is done and provided to you. I urge you to either vote no on this bill or defer it, pending that historical analysis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Roberts? Okay, we'll move on to Gigi Zhang.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the Legal Matters and the Executive Matters and Legal Affairs Committee. Sorry, I'm so tired right now. We're commenting we're providing comments, and we're going to testify in strong support. So there are so many aspects of firearms, and today I will focus on presenting research from Congress, the federal government, and then I will point out something from the Brin decision. So in a congressional hearing about firearms from June 2022, the representative from New York testified amongst expert witnesses. AOC asks the expert witness, in your view, are you seeing a correlation between gun deaths and gun profit? The expert witness answers yes. So if the research and evidence proves that more guns equates to more deaths, it is reasonable to conclude that we need to enhance the policies in order to protect people from abuse of the Second Amendment. Congress passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act last year. It has been 3 decades since Congress has passed a Gun Control Act. And at the same time, Supreme Court passes 2 rulings to allow unrestricted guns. So although there is, opposing views from the legislative and judiciary branch, it is still in good faith that they're operating for the betterment of the citizens.
Okay, and if you could wrap up, we would appreciate that.
Yes, I will wrap up in conclusion. So from the Brin decision, page 12, it does say, in conclusion, like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. And from the writ of certiorari, it also says the government should only be permitted to restrict the Second Amendment if it can provide comparable defense, such as law enforcement, armed security, metal detectors, or other defensive instruments. So therefore, the bill is constitutionally sound, and we support it. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, hearing none, we've reached the end of the list of registered remote testifiers. Clerks, is there anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. So, members, we'll proceed to discussion. I'd like to take a moment to just outline the structure here in the interest of ensuring a balanced discussion so that all perspectives are represented fairly. I'll be moderating in accordance with Council Rule 16G. A council member may not speak longer than 5 minutes, nor may such member speak more than twice on the same question without leave of the presiding officer. So you can ask to do that, subject to an appeal of the council, unless such speaker is the maker of the motion or sponsor of the matter pending, in which case such member may speak in reply, but not until every other council member choosing to speak has spoken. So we'll all take turns. I would also remind members that Bill 57 addresses the concealed carry of firearms in sensitive places. As with testimony, discussion and questioning should be directly related to the issue at hand, and I'll remind members to adhere to this as may be needed. And members, we are in discussion. Members, is there any discussion on Bill 57? And I also want to acknowledge that the Deputy Managing Director, as well as our Deputy Corporation Counsel, is here and available for any questions, or perhaps if they'd like to make any statements now. Up to you.
Good afternoon, Chair, and Vice Chair, and Council members. I do know this has been a long afternoon for all of you, so I want to just let you know that we're here to answer any questions you might have, any thought process on the original bill that was introduced. And I do want to thank Council Members Talba, Council Member Tupola, and you, Chair, for having a discussion with us early on about these CDs. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so noting that they're here and available, Member Talba.
I have questions for both Corp Counsel and admin.
Please proceed.
This is for Corp Counsel. Could you share with us what actions the federal courts have taken in regards to the court challenges to sensitive places legislation that have been enacted since the Bruin case, or June of 2022. Specifically, what has been struck down or upheld preliminarily?
Thank you, Councilmember. Daniel Gluck, Deputy Corporation Counsel. So my understanding is that there have been 2 court decisions, one out of New York and one out of New Jersey. If I recall correctly, the district court, which is the trial court in the New York case, entered an injunction that barred enforcement of some but not all of the sensitive places. That has gone up on appeal, and my understanding is that the ruling has been stayed on appeal, meaning that the law is being enforced currently. In New Jersey, same story. There was an injunction that was given against some but not all of the sensitive places, and I believe that is also being appealed.
Awesome, thank you. And my next question is, federal courts require that sensitive places legislations be based on historical precedent, right? So what is the historical precedent for each of the proposed sensitive places listed in Bill 57?
Councilmember, I think if you wanted to get into a discussion of the legality of the bill, I would recommend an executive session.
Okay, thank you, sir. City administration, please. Thank you. What is the city prepared to pay for potential lawsuits? Because, we heard all today how we are struggling just kind of to make ends meet. So I just want to know, for me personally, is the city prepared to pay for potential lawsuits?
Councilmember, thank you for that question. I think to answer that question appropriately, we'll just take a quick step back. Our state has some of the lowest rates of gun violence. We believe it's because of our robust gun laws. With the Bruin decision, our city administration believed that an expansive definition of sensitive places was most protective of our community. And therefore, yes, to the extent that there's litigations, we'll defend it.
Thank you.
Okay. Members, any other discussion or perhaps any other questions? Okay. Vice Chair Kiaina and then Member Tupola.
Thank you, Chair, for having calendared this measure. I strongly support policies that further gun safety and violence prevention. Keeping our community safe, especially our children and other vulnerable populations, should be our top priority. Hawaii has one of the lowest rates of gun deaths per capita, and prohibiting concealed guns in sensitive places will help to prevent Hawaii gun death and violence rates from rising. For the administration, as currently drafted, Bill 57 would prohibit carrying concealed firearms at private businesses or nonprofit organizations unless the businesses expressly consents. I understand that some of the opposition is recommending changing it to require private businesses to expressly prohibit it instead. Given Hawaii's extensive history disallowing concealed firearms, do we think small businesses know that concealed firearms may be allowed in their businesses right now?
Vice Chair, that's a good question, and I think that goes to why we thought an opt-in made sense. The common understanding right now is that people aren't bringing concealed carry into private businesses. And I don't know that the information is out there in such a manner that folks would be able to make that decision to opt out. So that's why from a policy perspective, we thought it made sense that the default should be what it is right now.
I understand. My follow-up, given the challenges we saw small businesses face during COVID, including pushback from customers when the businesses implemented COVID policies, do we think that requiring businesses to expressly prohibit it may cause more conflicts between businesses and customers that want to carry guns?
That's a good question, and we do seek feedback from businesses as we go through this legislative process, but that's certainly a consideration.
I mentioned in a previous hearings with regard to the role that the Office of Economic Revitalization plays. I do believe part of their job is to educate businesses on current laws and regulations that impact them. And the implications of Bill 57 would be one of them. So I do recommend that, separate from whatever the outcome is of this measure, that the Office of Economic Vitalization in their outreach efforts educates people so that they could be prepared. So regardless of, again, the final product of this measure, at the end of the day, they need to understand current law and potentially a new law that comes as a result of this. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. I'll have that discussion with the director for OER and put that thought in their heads.
Thank you. Member Tupola.
Thank you so much, Chair. In follow-up with Councilmember Kiana's question for Deputy Managing Director, I liked what both of you said about getting input from the businesses, because currently the concern from some stakeholders as well as HPD is the ability to enforce without a sign. So I'll give you an example. Right here in front of the DLNR building, lots of illegal homeless camping going on, and they just put up a sign that now it's not allowed, and now there's not any. It's only because you need a sign and you need to give notice so that you can say, hey, we gave you clear, adequate warning that that's not allowed here, and therefore you're now violating the law. Another example in our current city statute is about abandoned cars. So when we haul abandoned cars off the road, there has to be a sign. It says exactly what size the sign is. Once you get that sign up, you can haul the car away, because you've now told them that your car doesn't belong here and we're going to take it away now. So I guess my question is, will the administration be assuming that all who don't put a sign in allowance, that there is a prohibition without a sign?
So the way the bill is drafted is that the assumption is that concealed carry is not allowed unless express consent is given, and we try to be not overly prescriptive about what express consent means. So it could be a sign, it could be the store manager saying, yeah, consent has been given, they can bring concealed carry in here.
Thank you. I just wanted to state for the bill itself, it said that the person may put up a sign. And so I think that the concern when I met with the chief of police is enforcement. So back to my original statement, as you proceed forward with OER and with businesses, I would expressly go over that. Because right now for tenants in buildings, and that's what the chief was concerned about, do I deal with the landlord or do I deal with the tenant? Because if the tenant is allowing it, but the landlord prohibits it, where do I instruct my officers? Does it start in the parking lot? Does it start in the mall when you open, or does it start at the institution of the tenant's place of business? So if you guys can clarify that, I do hear where you're going, but I think that historically everything that we've prohibited has had to have some type of sign that it's prohibited, so that people are clear that you got notification when you walked in here. But I hear the other side's concern that we don't want any conflict. We don't want people to get in arguments with business owners. So I think we just have to be careful proceeding through that.
Understood, Councilmember. And as I mentioned, we try not to be overly prescriptive, but if the council feels that signage makes sense, then that's certainly something that could be explored.
Okay, before we proceed, I've just been informed that our Olelo connection is down, so we're going to have to take a little pause. We'll take a short recess while we get Olelo back up. So if we could recess and be back at 2:20, we can, we'll take a 5-minute recess and let them figure that out. Sorry to do this in the middle of questioning. So recess till 2:20. Thank you.
I always feel confused when they're like, stop, you dropped connection. I'm like, where?
Okay, welcome back. We are gavelled back into our meeting. Thanks everyone for your indulgence. Before we continue with our discussion, just a quick announcement. We do have the transportation meeting scheduled for 2:30. We're going to push that to 3:30 or until we're done with Bill 57, whichever happens first, or I guess whichever happens last. So, so 3:30. So I see Robert over there, so roughly 3:30. Okay. Back to our discussion here. Councilmember Tupola, please proceed.
Thanks so much, Chair. Still for Deputy Managing Director. So my next question is in regards to the first portion that said all areas within or on city-owned controlled buildings or offices. So last year, I worked with Chair's office to get all the city properties, which is upwards over 1,000 different places. So my question is, how will the public and HPD be able to identify every single city-owned or controlled building? And does controlled mean leased?
So, Councilmember, that's a good question. Controlled in this situation could mean leased. So we do have city workers in private buildings, for example. So those offices where those city workers are would be covered by this.
What about city buildings that are being leased to non-city offices? Like, so say, for example, people are leasing from us. So like in some of the, people are managing some of our city housings. And so is it both ways?
So if it's city owned or city controlled, so it'd be both to be covered. And as far as housing, there is an exception. It does exclude dwelling units as long as they're not used as childcare facilities.
So I guess to my question, how will the public and HPD know all of the city-owned or controlled buildings? I barely know them. I just looked at the list, which is a lot.
That's a fair question. The way we looked at this when we were drafting it was that it would be any place where a city function is happening. So any private office any private building where there's a city office, where the city employees and you're going there for a city function, that's how you know it's a city controlled property.
Okay, so I think that there's an assumption that people would know that city businesses are happening there. Not everyone knows which buildings are city, and not every officer knows which buildings are owned by the city or controlled. So I think specificity is what the chief was concerned about. The other concern he had when we had our working group was the word appurtenant. So he's concerned about parking lots and appurtenant parking lots. So again, for enforcement, they need specificity on the edges of where this is. So in a business, there's maybe a front entrance, a back entrance, but on an appurtenant parking lot, then we have multiple areas that you can enter. So they just need specificity on that. And how will they, as officers, be able to enforce appurtenant areas? And does that include overhangs? I mean, everything. They just wanted real specifics on that word and why it's being used.
I appreciate that, Council Member. I do know that HPD is here to offer their wisdom on this as well. So,
okay, I can ask them, but the chief is currently at a senior Valentine's dance with the mayor, so I'll save it. I'm glad they're with the seniors. I guess my other question was about a lockbox. So for most of the places where it's going to be prohibited, typically for those who are conceal and carry, they're supposed to be allowed to store their firearm as they enter and as they leave. So say, for example, in the case of my constituent, Michael Rice, that he only travels by the bus. So his only way to commute to and from home, and then he has a walk that he has to walk from the time he gets off of public transit to where he goes home. Will there be a place, if this law is upheld, where they're going to be able to secure their weapons so that they can protect themselves? Again, self-defense, only self-defense on the way home.
Councilmember, if the question is whether there will be a secure location where he'll be able to store his firearm for when he gets off the bus and he can walk home, the answer is that's currently not contemplated by this bill. But that's something that perhaps we should be discussing.
Okay, and last question. When I met with the chief, he was concerned about the 100 feet edges of any First Amendment expressive activity because it wasn't clear if it would be from the center of the activity, from the edges. It was a very arbitrary way of measuring 100 feet around any expressive activity, which in the last bill we voted on for sound in Waikiki, everybody's supposedly expressing their First Amendment there. So just some specificity there. And I think someone else brought up the whole 200 feet from voter centers, which I'm not sure. I think just a clear start and stop to where it's going to be enforced.
So the bill is specific as to it being 100 feet from the outer edge of the expressive activity happening, but
as it's, what he's saying is that it's usually organic. So he's saying that most of the time when they're at any of these events, that there's multiple areas that are the edges. Is it the edges of the actual event or where people are gathered? So again, it was just an enforcement question, and I do want to make the administration aware that these are the people that are going to have to enforce exactly what's written. So thank you, Deputy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Member Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Was Major available to answer questions or? Okay, appreciate it. Oh yeah, the on button.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Council, and Committee. Major Joseph Trinidad, Records and Identification Division. I have the firearms unit, and I'm here to answer any questions.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here, Major. Could you maybe just start from kind of the macro level beginning? So generally, what does it take for you as a police officer to stop somebody or engage a process of doing an investigation?
What was the question again?
So to begin an investigation or do a stop, what does that look like? What is the process that you go through? You're looking for a crime, right? You're looking for some type of violation.
Okay. Well, first of all, just Councilmember Topola, she hit on some of our concerns. And can I start off with first and foremost, we understand the intent of this bill and working actively with the city administration and court counsel for an easily understandable bill for enforcement. Again, in the interest of public safety. We get it. We've been hearing it and everything, but in order to enforce it, it has to be clear and understandable by the public and by us, by our officers to actually enforce it.
Okay. So typically, say you observe a crime, right?
Yes, sir.
You approach that person, do an investigation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then at some point, you may decide you're going to arrest that person.
If all the circumstances are there, we evolve the facts and everything, sir. So going back to Pola's comments.
Sorry.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah, in regards to the comments, again, we have the rules, we have the laws and regulations, but again, that's textbook. Basically, I would say from my military experience, situation dependent. What do you have at hand? What do you have? Do you actually have a crime? Do you have something else? Is it a community situation, a community problem, such as a homeless? Again, it's not against the law to be homeless, but again, it's a community situation. Yeah.
Okay.
So again, we do have the law. We do understand the intent. For regards generally, do we have a crime first and foremost?
Okay. So I mean, it's fair to say you see something going on, you might do an investigation.
Yeah, of course. Okay. We have to get our facts.
And then say the law, whether the law is by consent or presumed, you'd have to have some type of evidence to show the existence of that consent or lack of consent, correct?
Again, situational dependent.
Exactly. And then if, say, you went to court, you'd have to have a person actually show up to either indicate, the evidence or lay the foundation for some sign that's on the building, correct?
Yeah, you hit it right there, sir.
Or lay the foundation for lack of consent, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So either way, the ongoing process is similar. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
Generally so, yes, sir.
Okay. And same thing if you show up and you're assessing how far someone is from a group, I mean, officers would be trained how to apply the law to a particular situation, correct?
Well, we have to train our officers. Again, I've been in the department over 30 years. This is a whole paradigm shift. I've never thought in my career we would see, license to carry, because so be it. We're doing our best to accommodate everybody's rights and everything. So that being said, for our officers, again, we're not lawmakers, we're law enforcement. We got to enforce the law, but in order to do that, we have to train our officers from the top down.
And they're actually trained pretty well, right? I mean, that's why
I would say so.
Sometimes they get poached away to like the West Coast or whatnot.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so generally would you say our officers know what they're doing, know how to apply the law?
Yes, sir. And in regards to that, we do have refreshers every year. I guess all the training we get and everything, every year officers get the, talking about CPR, just refreshers and anything hot and heavy, like such as right now the license to carry for the owners and everything. How does the officer approach and what is what is the training? What are we supposed to do in regards to that? Yeah, and that's ongoing. Again, just because the officers are trained, we do get refresher training because you folks know in law enforcement, there's especially the knowledge, it can be perishable. So in order to refresher, but get everybody back on track, we have training every year in regards to what you talk about. But I'm talking generally, but yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Major.
Yes, sir.
That's all for the questions.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And Chair, just if I may, I want to first mahalo everyone that showed up today, particularly those in opposition, because I think all of you show a commitment to what we want to see, right? We want to see folks that take carrying a gun seriously, take the safety of our community seriously. I do support the bill, though, because, as a prior domestic violence prosecutor, I understand that there are quote unquote bad guys, right? There's people out there that are going to commit crimes. I've seen it. People stab their partner in the heart or the chest with a kitchen knife or crack their skull open with a hammer, right? And to some degree, I know everyone here has seen, serious stuff going on in our community. But I do also recognize that, when we're talking about good guys, bad guys, it's not an all-in, all-out kind of scenario, right? We have situations that can escalate quickly. We have officers that show up at a scene and have to make a split-second decision whether, this person's a threat or not a threat, or may be able to prevent them from going home to their family that night. And like Major said, I know he didn't take a position, but this is after decades of having the law be what it is in Hawaii, right? And what strikes me is that Bill 57 in its current form is actually granting more rights to gun owners than what the law was before the Supreme Court decision in terms of how you carry, for example, right? If you have a permit and you're driving to the range, doesn't have to be in your trunk. If you're a private business owner, right? Maybe like some of the folks we have up on North Shore that are concerned about safety issues and crime, you can have your firearm on you, right? And you can consent under the laws it's written for the community to come in with the firearm, right? So I think that it's important to recognize that I don't think it's unreasonable for all the people I've talked to in the community, at the community association meetings, at our neighborhood boards, every area of District 2, Kahaluu, Kolaloa, North Shore, Wahiawa, Kunia, to, not want guns at their kids' soccer game, to not want them in their classrooms. I don't think that's unreasonable, especially given Hawaii's history. And I do think it's important to really look at what our role is, right? John Wesley famously outlined 3 simple rules, right? Do no harm, do good, stay in love with God. And I think it's pertinent that do no harm comes first, right? Because there's always differences of opinion about what is good. But if we start with do no harm, as government officials, we can assess what is the outcome from all of our decisions that we make, right? And it puts us in a space to think, okay, we need to be looking out for the entirety of our community. And when the data shows that sensible gun regulations that still are going to let people go hunting, go to the gun range, have a gun at their business. I think when we see that actually will result data-wise in saved lives, I think it makes sense. And so I support the bill for that reason. But I really appreciate folks taking the time to come down here and share their opinion. Mahalo.
Thank you. Other members, discussion or questions perhaps? Okay. Vice Chair Kiana.
Question for the Deputy Managing Director. In a previous hearing, I believe I had asked you about hospitals, and I think, if I recall, you replied that it probably likely falls under the section pertaining to private business or charitable organizations without express consent. Is that correct? I just want to...
That's correct.
Okay, so having said that, I guess I just believe that because I worry about hospitals and health facilities as it pertains to women's health, I would like to have it. As the bill moves forward, I would probably like to add it under the definition of sensitive places, so it wouldn't be discretionary. So I just wanted to let you know that, because I know we had that dialogue, but I don't know if I want the discretion to be on the health facility. I think that anyone who is, everyone should be protected. But relating to female reproductive health, I think there are a lot of scenarios where we need to be very, very careful and safeguard the interests of those seeking, seeking to receive services. So I just want to let you know that.
Thank you. Members, any other questions or discussion points? Member Tupola.
Thanks so much, Chair. And I just wanted to thank you, Chair, for your listing of all of the legislation moving on the state side so everyone's aware. And I do think that the current bill that is moving, there is some of the additions of what we're talking about in that bill. So hopefully we'll have more clarity within their readings. I want to thank also the previous council members. I feel like we're having a very good discussion, very respectful. We're all sharing what we think. And I also do want to thank all of the testifiers, both in favor and support. I actually agreed with a lot of things said on both sides. So I think we're all in agreement that we need to keep working towards the goal. I just wanted to share a little bit more about the CD that myself and Councilmember Tolba worked on, just so that there's some idea of where it came from. And I did want to make mention that we showed it to the mayor and his team way before we introduced it so that they would know where we're coming from. And we tried to give them explanations on case law that we were looking at in order to draft it. I agree with the administration's stance on defining the sensitive locations. And of course, as stated earlier, per the Bruin case, it is constitutionally permissible to have safe, sensitive locations, but also that it needs to be narrowly defined within city jurisdictions to afford individuals the right to self-defense. I support school safety, mental health care, increased funding, support for law enforcement, and I have a firm position on gun crime with serious penalties for criminals who break the law. I'm actually opposed to a current illegal shooting range that's happening in my district, which you'll see on the news shortly. I have studied pertinent case law about what's going on with the New York, New Jersey. There's also DC and Virginia that had proposed legislation that's currently also in court and has injunctions against it. For example, I know that I think it's Corp Counsel Mr. Gluck, yes, Dan, he did share that the injunction cited that some of them had to not be upheld and some of them were. So here are a few of the places that in the injunction that were not able to be considered sensitive places: health, behavioral, dependent care services, places of religious observation, parks, zoos, places where you consume alcohol, theater, banquet halls, airports, places where you exercise your First Amendment rights, and of course, they threw Times Square in their law. But I just wanted to share that because in the in the injunction, which I read, in every single line in the New York case, the judge shared why that particular place couldn't be considered a sensitive place. And so when Councilmember Tolba and I were working on this, we tried to consider all of the parameters that were given on the interpretation of the law. And as I mentioned, I met with HPD as well as stakeholders because I wanted to see how we could coincide our concerns with enforcement so that what we're talking about can physically be implemented into what happens on the streets. I do think that Councilmember Tolba's question in regards to historical precedents is super important because if and when we might have to go to court to defend this, we can't determine then how we came up with some of these areas. We have to know where the historical precedents came from and why we're suggesting those. I do think that I was aware that probably the administration was not going to go for our CD1, but the idea here was that we wanted to give them some maybe pieces of legislation that they could take and use. And specifically, I'm talking about the signage, because I do think that it's going to be really hard on businesses, and I don't want there to be altercations, but some of the things we wrote in the CD1 was posting signage clearly, that it be a certain size, that it have a certain verbiage so that there's not different words on different signs, and that at all public entrances, it has to be posted, not at one, but at all. And that also that there has to be a way for the public to be able to see that. So again, I appreciate the administration and yourself, Chair, and all of the comments that have been made today, but I do feel like based upon the injunctions that have been ordered that the current version of Bill 57 will face legal challenges. And I'm hoping that we can bring more clarity for good enforcement to keep our communities safe, and as well acknowledge that those who are applying for this are legal, law-abiding citizens that have had to go through a lot of things to be able to do what they're asking to do to defend themselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Tupola. Is there any other discussion from any other council members? Okay, very well. Seeing that there is no further discussion, I would like to make a recommendation from the chair. And before I do that, I want to articulate that we have our hearing today. We have full council on February 22nd, and then we have an EMLA meeting on February 28th, and then full council, the next full council thereafter is March 15th. And we heard a good number of testimonies today, limited of course to 1 minute. At full council, we are going to be doing a public hearing which is 3 minutes, and we're going to have the opportunity to hear further testimony. Based on the testimony today, as well as the testimony that we receive on or before February 22nd, what I'd like to be able to do is prepare a full draft based on the testimony from today, as well as full council for the next EMLA meeting on February 28th. And so I really appreciate Councilmember Tupola bringing up many of these questions, which I think were very legitimate questions about things that we could put into a future draft. I appreciate the testimony from both sides, particularly those that talked about which places should be kept as sensitive places in the city and county of Honolulu. And so it's my idea and intent that we'll have a more robust draft on February 28th to consider at that meeting. And that'll give us the opportunity to get a better sense of what we do or what the state is doing. We heard some of that today. We'll get a better sense of the federal landscape, especially because some of the courts in these places like New York and New Jersey have been moving, as well as in other jurisdictions. We'll have a better understanding, hopefully, of the historical context behind some of these proposed sensitive places here in the city and county of Honolulu, as well as the justifications that other jurisdictions have used with regard to their sensitive places. And of course, more testimony from business owners, other stakeholders, advocates on both sides, and we'll be able to respond to the questions that were raised today. So that being said, that being said, the chair is going to recommend that Bill 57 of 2022 be amended to the hand-carried CD1 that's on your desk. That's TDST2, OCS 2023-008726-2023, 10:46 a.m. And again, this makes just minor changes, such as revising it from ROH 1990 to ROH 2021, correcting the definition of public places from the previous CD1, and changing the word firearm to pistol or revolver in one section of the bill. And again, at the February 22nd meeting, we'll have a fuller hearing on this. And then at the February 28th meeting, I anticipate having a more robust draft, and I look forward to all members' input into this. So that being the recommendation, is there any discussion on the recommendation? Okay. Any objections to the recommendation to amend to the hand-carried CD1? Hearing no objections, any reservations? Okay. Hearing none, Bill 57 of 2022 is amended to the hand-carried CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 57 of 2022 CD1 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion on that? Any objections? Oh, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to also echo what was stated earlier. Thank you to all those who have been sharing testimonies. Just like many of the people here in this body, I'm very concerned with public safety. I'm a mom. It's paramount, not just to me personally, but to my community. So thank you again for hearing this important measure. However, I will at this time be voting no on this measure. I acknowledge that the Supreme Court has included the recognition of sensitive places, such as schools and government buildings, where it is constitutionally permissible to prohibit or otherwise regulate the carry of firearms. And I look forward to us hearing this again in the council. With that being said, I believe that Bill 57 is both overreaching for the city council and is best taken up with the state legislature. We heard a lot of discussion today about how it was heard yesterday on the Senate. As it's also a likely infringement on our Constitution's Second Amendment rights by imposing an undue burden on ordinary law-abiding citizens, many of whom we heard today, who have a constitutionally protected right to carry a handgun for self-defense outside the home. So for these reasons, at this time, I'll be voting in opposition, and I look forward again to us meeting forward with the full council. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Member Okimoto. Noting objections,
Chair.
Oh, pardon me, yes.
Councilmember Tolba.
Oh, Councilmember Tolba, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I too will be voting no. While the changes made are good, I do not believe that the bill as a whole is constitutional, and therefore I cannot support it. The Second Amendment gives individuals the right to defend themselves outside of their homes. The bill will make it harder for law-abiding citizens who are licensed to exercise this constitutional right. This bill goes beyond what the Supreme Court said was okay. So we need to follow the guidelines of the Supreme Court and limit sensitive places to areas rooted in American history and tradition. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Member Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your CD1 with the non-substantive corrections and for all the work that you did. I also will be voting in opposition on the underlying Bill 57. I look forward to the administration perhaps taking some of our recommendations up in the next version, but I do still have a lot of concerns based upon the questions that I asked. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the concerns and questions that you raised, Member Tupola, and again, hopefully before the EMLA meeting on 2/28, we can get some further clarity. Noting objections, a roll call vote is required on this matter, so Clerk, if we could call the roll.
Oh, you do.
Or do I do it?
Yes.
Oh, I got to do it, all right. Roll call vote. Member Cordero?
Aye.
Member Kiaina?
Aye.
Member Okimoto?
No.
No. Member Say? Aye. Member Tupola?
No.
Member Tolba, sorry, I went out of order.
No.
Okay. Member Chair Waters? Member Wire?
Aye.
Okay. And Chair votes aye. That is 6 ayes and 3 noes. So this bill has been reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Okay. Members, it is 2:50 right now, and I did mention that we would do transportation at 3:30. So we can either begin our executive session now, or we could take a little break and come back after transportation. So you want to start executive session now. Okay, we're going to proceed into executive session until roughly 3:30, depending on how this goes. We'll gavel this out, then gavel in transportation. Transportation shouldn't take that long. We only have 2 items, and there's not much testimony. So thank you, everyone. We are going to be entering into executive session. Members, the following items are posted on the agenda, and they have been referred to executive session. Items 5, request for authorization to settle a case against the City and County of Honolulu entitled Matthew Tabag Kalua et al. Versus City and County of Honolulu et al. Civil number 1CCV-22-000415, Circuit Court. Item 6, as listed on the agenda, request for authorization to settle 10 cases against the City and County of Honolulu, listed in item 6 of the agenda. And item 7, resolution for authorization to settle case against the City and County of Honolulu, entitled Ronald G. Livingston et al. Versus Arthur J. Logan et al. Civil number CV19-000157, JMS RT USDC. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers on the matters that have been referred to executive session?
Chair, there are none.
Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify on the matters referred to executive session? Okay, seeing none, are there any folks who have registered to testify remotely on the matters that have been referred to executive session?
Chair, there are none.
Seeing none, is there anyone standing by to remotely testify on these matters?
No testifiers.
Okay, there being none, are there any objections to convening into executive session? Noting none, without objections, the committee convenes into a closed meeting pursuant to HRS sections 92-4 and 92-5A4 to consult in a closed meeting with its attorneys on questions and issues pertaining to the powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and or liabilities of the city, the council, and its committees on the items listed on the agenda for executive session. The following persons will be participating in executive session: all council members, Corporation Counsel, Seichi Layu, and Kamakana Watanabe, Office of Council Services staff. Members, for the purposes of social distancing requirements, will remain seated at the council chamber for executive session. Any non-executive session staff must vacate the council chamber, and the video recording and audio broadcast of the meeting shall cease until we reconvene from executive session. And I will now call a recess.